Well, it didn't work, or I've been having trouble recording. I'll start it and then it'll just shut down in the middle, so.
And then you have to restart.
And then I have to restart, so yeah. Or earlier, I couldn't even, nothing would even load so that I could start to record, so. Okay, so today, first thing we're going to do is go over this worksheet. Your homework tonight looks very, very similar. If I scroll down, that's your worksheet tonight. Okay, it looks almost exactly the same with different numbers. But we're going to go over this. We're going to start a notes page to where we can get through the notes quicker tomorrow. Okay? So let's go over this first. The first one, the first row. Why should you not have to do any work at all for that first row, Brady? Okay, and it's one of the ones we should have memorized. It's one of the common ones. So yes, 0.9 is 9/10. What percent, Hannah? 90%. Okay, so some of these were fairly easy. Some of them required us to do a little bit of work. Second one, Nev, what is 0.744 as a percent?
74.4%.
Good job, 74.4%. Who can give me the fraction? Brady?
I got 93 over 125.
Okay, so you think it's 93 over 125? You guys agree or disagree?
I agree.
Oops.
Yeah, 125.
Sorry, you said it right. I wrote it wrong. Okay, so let's check. Where would we have started? Lexi, where would we have started with that as a fraction? How do you say this decimal? $744 thousandths. So we would have started here. If you have that, you would have gotten a little bit of points taken off because you didn't. I would have wrote finish or I would have wrote reduce. If I divide both of those by 2, does anybody have that?
372.
Okay, 372, which they're both still even. So we could divide by 2 again. 186 over 250.
Still even.
So then I could reduce
93
again. That's where the 93 over 125 came. Okay, on this, if you had this, you would have lost points and I would have wrote probably reduce. If you had any of these ones, I probably would have wrote finish, meaning you reduced once but you didn't go far enough. Okay, so that one required quite a bit of work. Next one, 0.62, Alex, percent.
62%.
62%. Fraction, Colton, what did you get for the fraction?
38 over 62.
Okay, I agree with, no.
60 or probably 62.
So to start, it would be 62 over what?
30.
Nope. What place is that in? How do we say that? 62 hundredths, or we could put 62 over 100 from the percent. Okay, but then if we divide both of those by 2, we would get 31 50ths. 31 50ths. Next one, 1.56. Bryce, give me my percent.
For 1.56,
Yep.
your percent would be 156%.
156%. Fraction, Brady.
1 and 14/25.
Okay, because we would have started with, let me erase some of this over here. Yeah, I just got to erase some of this so I have room. Okay, we would have started with 1. Let me get rid of that. Okay. Make sure it's the right size. Okay. 1 and 56 over 100, which we could reduce that to 1 and,
19 over 25.
nope, we're not there yet. 56 divided by 2. It's 56 divided by 2.
Oh,
28.
25.
28.
Sorry.
Reduce both of those by 2. We should get over to 14. Is that what you said?
No, 45. 19 over 25.
Oh, yes, bottom's 24. Sorry. Sorry, I was just focused on the top. 1 and 14 25ths, is that what you said?
Yep.
Okay. 1 and 14 over 25. Okay, the next one, 15 16ths. We don't like this one. Why?
Because it's not.
Yeah, you have to divide it out. You cannot get 16 to 10, 100, or 1,000 easily. I'm going to try and erase again. I don't have much workspace over here. Okay, and we didn't talk about this much yesterday. The general rule when you're dividing these out, most fractions when you divide them out, they're not pretty, okay? So the general rule is you go out 4 places. If you get out 4 places and it hasn't gotten to an end point yet, or if you have not noticed a repeating pattern, then you just stop and round it back to 3 places. Okay, so in general, you go until you have 4 decimal places. By then, if it doesn't stop, then you can go ahead and stop and round it to 3 places. Or you can stop before that if it gets to a remainder of 0, or if you notice a repeating pattern. Okay, so with this one, 15 goes underneath. 15 goes underneath. We're dividing by 16. Does 16 go into 15?
No.
No. So we'd add a decimal point and a 0. When I worked this for the last class, the first thing I did is went through and did my multiples of 16. So 16, 32, 48, 60, 64, and then 80, 96, 112, 128.
150.
No, it's not 150.
No. 140. No.
It's 130. 134. 150 now.
It's 144.
Oh yeah, 144.
Because plus 20 would be
That's plus
48, yep.
Multiple.
Plus 16 would be
160.
160. Okay, and that's times 10. So 16 into 150, if we look, it can get me to here,
So 9.
which is 9. So 144. Subtract, I get 6. Drop a 0. 60 would get me here, which is just times 3. 48. 12. Drop a 0. 120 gets me here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 112. I get 8. Drop a 0. This is my 4th one. So if it didn't come out pretty, which it does because 5 times 16 is 80, we could stop and then round. But since I got to an exact answer, do I want to round?
No.
No, you only want to round if that's our only option. An exact answer is always better than a rounded answer. So 0.9375, because we got to an end point. What percentage is that, Mallory? 93.75%. So everybody have that. I'm going to clear the whole screen. Okay, and again, those ones are the long ones, the harder ones, but those that don't show up that often, where we have to do all of that work to get an answer. Okay, let me clear that. I'm going to go ahead and scoot up. Scoot over. Oh, now my little button went away. Now I have to wait. Okay, 7 over 25. Why do we like that one better? Because we can get it to 100 easily. So we still have to do a little bit of work. I'm just going to show it right here. How do I get 25 to 100? Times 4. What's 7 times 4? 28 hundredths. How do I write that as a decimal, Alex? 0.28. And if it's over 100, I have options. If it's over 100, my percent has to be 28%. Or from my decimal, if I move my decimal place 2 places to the right, I would still get 28%. Okay, so we have some options. 13 over 52. Do we like it or do we not like it?
No.
We don't like it unless you noticed that 52 is a multiple of 13. Raise your hand if you didn't notice that. Most people don't because we don't know our multiples of 13. When you divide it out, raise your hand if you divide it out. 13 divided by 52.
Well,
Okay, Maddox, what did you get?
I got 0.25.
0.25 is correct. What fraction should we know is equivalent? 1/4. This reduces to 1/4. If you would have noticed that, you could have just said, oh, 1/4, that's 0.25 and 25%. But they're not always that obvious. So if you divide it out, you should still get the same answer, okay? Next one. So when you see it, when it gives you a fraction, see if you can reduce it, because sometimes that does make your life easier. And even if you still have to divide it out, it's easier to divide smaller numbers. So look at 6/9. Can 6/9 be reduced? To what? 2/3. So we could have reduced that to 2 2/3. You could have divided 6 divided by 9. But what is the decimal for 2/3? 0.6 repeating. So this would be 2.6 repeating. Raise your hand if you divided that one out also. Okay, and again, you would still get the same answer. I'm just showing you those common ones do show up frequently. Now, the percentage on this one is a little bit weird. Let's just write out the first few out to the side. I'm going to write the first few places of this because that would be 2.66666. I'm just going to put a repeating bar over it at the back. How many times do I have to move the decimal point to turn it into a percentage? Twice. So 1, 2. What is the best way to write that? Bianca? So the repeating bar can't be in the whole numbers. There's only repeating decimals. So we're to here, 266 point. How can I show that in a better way? Chase? 266 and 2/3%. And again, if you missed this one, I'm not too worried about you. But we don't like to have repeating decimal percents. It's just weird. So we usually flip it back to the fraction. Again, if you don't have that, go ahead and write it. But those are the repeating decimal ones are the weird ones. Remember, a repeating decimal, it just shows that that decimal goes on forever. The fraction is the exact answer. 19%. Owen, what is that as a decimal? Alex, stop talking across Lexi. 19% is a decimal. 0.19. Lexi, the fraction. 19 hundredths, and that can't be reduced, so just 19 over 100. 24%, Nev, is a decimal.
24%?
Yep, as a decimal. 0.24. As a fraction, Noelle? 6 over 25. So that reduces all the way down. So if you had 24 hundredths, if you divided by 2, that would be 12 50ths. Divide by 2 again, 6 25ths. Brady, next one. 3% as a decimal. 0.03. That's a commonly missed one. What do you think a common wrong answer is?
0.3.
Yeah, you leave off the 0, which is a whole different number. It's not a, it is a huge difference, but it's a difference of having like 30 cents or 3 cents. Is it the same thing? No. Fraction. Noel? 3/100. 489%, Peyton, as a decimal. So 4.89. 4 and 89 hundredths. Chase, what about as a fraction?
4 and 89 hundredths.
Good job. 4 and 89/100.
Do we is there any way to simplify
89/100 does not simplify.
that? Okay, that's what I thought. I kept trying to
Yep.
work it out yesterday and I couldn't.
Nope, nothing goes into both of those. Okay, are there questions over any of these? Any of them that you struggled with, besides the ones that you have to divide it out and you just got to do long division? Questions? Okay, put that away. I'm going to pause this for a second. Okay, so like I said, we're going to start the lesson 10 notes, even though your homework tonight is just like last night's. It's so we can get through lesson 10 and 11 notes tomorrow. Because lesson 10 really isn't hard. Lesson 11 is where the math gets a little bit harder, but we have to know the basics from lesson 10.
Is tomorrow the one day we don't have homework that you said?
No. I think it's Wednesday, I believe.
Oh, tomorrow
That would be tomorrow. Tomorrow's Wednesday.
Oh, then yes, probably.
Are we gonna have homework on Friday?
No. Okay, so lesson 10 is just called What Are Percentages? Who has their, Peyton, you have your book out. Will you look up percent in the glossary of the math book? So just go to the very back.
That's life skills.
Okay, the definition is really generic. We're looking at percent. It's all the same.
The word percent.
Okay, go ahead, Peyton. What's it say?
The word percent means for each 100, the symbol for percent is a zero dash zero.
Okay, so it says percent is the rate per 100 or something like that. What does that mean? Let's write percent is a rate per 100. What does the word per tell us to draw in math, Brady? Like a what?
Ratio?
Okay, it could be a ratio, but that's like our divide sign or our slash. Miles per hour, we'd write miles slash hours. So what does it mean it's a rate per 100?
Oh, divide.
Brady?
A fraction that's like 6/100.
Yeah, it just means it's always out of 100. So it's a fraction. I'm just going to write always out of 100. Meaning, if you get a 64%, it means you got 64% out of 100.
Some things.
If you got a 64% on a test, what does that mean? You got 64% out of 100.
Questions. 100%.
Points. 100 score.
100 out of 100% possible correct on a test. Okay, if you got 60% correct, what percent did you get incorrect?
40.
40%, because it's always out of 100. Okay, if there are, if the school is made up 30% boys, what percentage are girls?
60 or 70.
70, because it always has to be 100%. If in pets, there's dog, cats, and fish. And 25 are dogs, 25 are cats. What percentage has to be fish if it's
50.
50 if those were the only three options, okay? So percent is always a rate per 100. And it also said that the symbol, which we should already know this, the symbol is just the percent sign. It's not like the pound sign where they have different names for the same symbol. That one, the only thing we ever call it is the percent sign. That should be an open circle. Next one. So easy it's hard. How do we write a percent? Bryce?
Just a number and then a percent.
Yes, you write the number and the percent sign behind it. Example, 40%. Owen, how do I write 40%?
40 with a percentage sign.
Yeah, we write 40 with the percent sign. Really, the only new thing in lesson 10 is the next stuff, the coins. Just to get you to kind of understand, why do you think when we first start talking about percents, Bryce, why do you think they have us talk about coins? Noel?
Because it's out of 100 and like pennies are out of 100 and then $1.
Yeah, so it has us find percents of $1 because $1 is equal to 100 cents. Okay, because it's out of 100. Let me, come on. Is it frozen? There we go. Coins as a percentage of $1. I'm going to make mine bigger. We're just going to do some examples on how to do these. We're going to tell what percentage of $1 are the following coins. So let's first say 2 dimes. I want you to write 2 dimes.
Isn't that 20?
So 2 dimes. How do I write 2 dimes as money? Brady?
20 cents.
How do I write 20 cents the proper way?
0.1. No, 0.2.
Yeah, 0.20.
And
How do I write that as a fraction? Bryce?
it's 20 tenths, or
No, it's
20 hundredths, so 20 over 100.
20 hundredths. And if it's over 100, what is the percent? 20%. Okay, so really we wrote 20 dimes, the value in money form. Then we changed it to fraction form. And then we know that if it's over 100, the top number is our percent. Okay, so those ones are easier. Let's do, and again, it's very repetitive. Do 3 dimes and 1 nickel. Yeah, skip. 3 dimes and a nickel. If you have that, how much money do you have, Alex?
You have 31 cents.
3 dimes and a nickel.
Oh, 35 cents.
35 cents. How do I write that properly as a decimal?
0.35.
0.35. Colton, how do I write that as a fraction?
You put 35 on top, then on the bottom you put 100.
Okay, so what percent would that be?
35.
35. Now, when we're talking about percentages, it's always a percent of something. Okay, it's just not like 20%, it's 20% of something else. In this case, what are we talking about? 20% of what? 2 dimes is 20% of $1. So let's go ahead and add that on. Of $1. 20% of $1 is 2 dimes. Or 3 dimes and a nickel is 35% of $1. Let's go ahead and do one more. 9 quarters. 9/4. Let's start out the same way. How much money do we have, Brady?
$2.25.
So we have 2.25 as a fraction. Noel?
2 as just normal, and then 25 over 100.
Okay, so we could write 2 and 25/100. Could I also write 225 over 100?
No. Yeah.
Are those the same?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I need to write 2 and 1/4.
What percentage is that? Brady? 225%, because it's over 100. I could have also gone from my decimal on any of these to get to my percent. Okay, so that is 225% of $1. What is weird about that? That it's more than 100%. Why does it make sense that it's more than 100%? Noel? Okay, there is a whole number in our fraction, but looking at our what we started with, Brady?
Because 225 is more than 100, and there's 100.
Yeah, because we have over one whole dollar. So if we had $4, what percentage of a dollar is that? Does anybody know? $4. Brady? 400%. So if you multiply by 4, it's 400%. If I have $6, what percent of a dollar is that? Nev? 600% of a dollar, which means it's 100% 6 times. You have $1 6 times. You have 100% 6 times. Okay, I want you to take a second and try and work these right here, this A, B, and C on your own. Try and work A, B, and C over on the side. Oh, thank you. Chase, help me get started. 1 dime. What is that as a decimal?
0.05.
Hold on. Dime.
Oh, 0.10.
Yep, 0.10. Mallory is a fraction? 10. So it's 10/100ths of a dollar is a dime technically. Alex, what percent of a dollar is that?
10% of $1.
So 10% of $1. Noel, B.
0.50.
Okay, 0.5. 0, go ahead. Fraction.
50 over 100.
50/100ths of a dollar. Okay, percent.
50%.
50% of $1. Good job. Mallory, C.
1.25.
Okay. Fraction.
1 and 25 hundredths.
Okay, or we could write 125 over 100. Both of those are okay. What percent?
125% of 100.
125% of $1. Because you know $1 is 100%, and you could break it up and say 25 hundredths. 100 plus 25 is 125. Lots of different ways to get there. Okay, the only other thing I want to do is go down to the bottom where it says misconceptions. When we start working the actual percentage problems, there's different, I'm going to teach you lots of different ways to do the same problem. Depending on the problem given, you might choose different methods each time, okay? So there is a percent equation that you're going to have to memorize. So I'm going to throw it in today. So I want you to write this down at the bottom. Percent equation. And I want you to write blank of blank is blank. Every percent problem has 3 pieces. They're represented by those 3 blanks. Does anybody think they know one piece of a percent problem? Nev? A what? Okay, a fraction is actually in a different, you are correct. We're also going to do a percent proportion, and a fraction will be part of that one. In this one, we don't use the fraction form, or we could, but it could be the fraction, the decimal of the number.
Why does that look like a
Bianca?
the percent?
Percent is a piece of a percent equation. Does that make sense? That a percent is a piece of the percent equation? Bianca? Okay, so in the examples we did, the dollar represents something. 100%, so we would, if I say you get 100% of the pizza, you get the whole pizza. Percent of whole, because it's not always 1, okay? The whole pizza could be 8 slices, so 8 could be the whole. What do you think the...
1.
So like in our example, we said 10% of $1 is 10 cents. Is kind of how, if I read, it's not always a decimal though. If we're calling this a whole, what could a percentage of the whole be called?
A fraction?
If it's not all of it,
It's some of it.
some of it, what's a better word for some of it?
I didn't know about.
Think about fractions. What's a fraction represent? What over what?
Denominator.
You're right. Numerator, denominator. What else could we call them?
Division.
Could. You're right. You're not wrong. The part. A percent of the whole is part. Percent of whole is part. It'll make more sense when we get into it and we're actually breaking these problems up. What does of mean in math? Brady?
Divide. The whole
Of. Half of 10 is
5.
5. What math can you do there?
Divide.
Well, you divide it by 2, but
Subtract. Subtract? Oh, what?
of. What does of mean? Nev? Multiply. Above of, I want you to put a times sign. Of means multiply. What does is mean?
Equals.
Equals. Above is, put an equal sign. So really, that's setting up an equation. The percent times the whole number equals the part. Again, we'll get more into that. There's also a percent proportion we can use. Percent proportion. A proportion, remember, is just equivalent ratios, Maddox. Same 3 parts, except we just rearrange them. Part over whole equals percent over. What is percent always over? 100. These are 2 different ways we're going to be able to solve percent problems. it will always give us 2 of the 3 parts, and we should be able to solve for the other one. So if it gives me the percent and the whole, I'll have to find the part. If it gives me the percent and the part, I'll have to find the whole. Or if it gives me the whole and the part, I can find the percent. That's what we're going to be learning over the next several days, is how to do that lots of different ways. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pass out your worksheet because that's as far as I needed to get today. So your homework is just to do the fraction decimal percent worksheet. Looks just like last night's, except at the top it says worksheet number 2. Okay? Put these notes somewhere where you can find them tomorrow.